What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly quarantine look in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheen with my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, are you still in quarantine up there?
Yeah, man. It's phase one here in Mass still. Uh People seem to not really care anymore, so I have to care. Not
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, we're in phase two, a week away from phase three down here in Westchester, and you'd think it was over. So wear your mask, people. Probably just a good idea in general. I don't hate the mask. I'm not anti-mask at all. How about you?
Nah, it's fine. I've actually really laughed at some of the Karen content we've gotten with people, you know, I'm not gonna wear my mask in the store, I have my civil liberties, and it's like, wait a minute, but like, do we not remember like no shirt, no shoes, no service? No one thought that was a infringement on their fucking rights, right? It's the same fucking shit. You don't want to wear a mask, don't go to the fucking store. I don't get what's so
Yeah,
complicated.
pretty simple. It's just people wanting to not be told what to do,
Yep.
and usually pretty hypocritical. But we won't stay too long on that. If you're watching and hearing our COVID takes, then you also probably want to hear our takes on pop culture. So hit that subscribe if you're watching on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, and also go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to consume the podcast any way you want to. Let's start with Dave Chappelle. This past Thursday at midnight, or I guess Thursday going into Friday, dropped a surprise comedy special on YouTube, recorded last week on the 6th of June in Yellow Springs, Ohio, where he lives, or close to where he lives, for a private show, private benefit, called Dave Chappelle and Friends, to talk with punchlines. I woke up Friday morning. Twitter was a buzz. Saw that Chappelle dropped a short special and saw a lot of clips out there. Obviously titled 846, addressing the George Floyd death, reference to the time that the officer was kneeling on George Floyd's neck until he murdered him. Chappelle, I thought, was excellent in this special. It's not really a joke-filled thing. It's more of a monologue. Chappelle giving his thoughts on the current unrest in the country, specifically the aftermath of the George Floyd killing and the protests. Dave, how did you feel just by like the tone of it, what Chappelle was saying, and just overall this as a special comedy special, quote unquote?
Yeah, so I mean, there's actually a comment in the YouTube video. It's like, sorry that this is less refined or whatever. I hope you understand, something along those lines. And that did definitely strike me. It's like, this is just a clip from an event. As you said, it was not a planned film special. This was not a routine that he had done a few times before deciding to film it, or filming it over multiple shows. So it's definitely different and unusual, because we are in a different and unusual time, I guess you could say. And I also thought it was really compelling. And as Dave said, not really particularly funny. I wouldn't call it a comedy special. He does make some jabs at people and ideas, as he's wont to do. But really, it's Dave commenting on what's going on in really the only way I guess he can. And I thought he did a pretty good job. And I mean, obviously, you can quibble about things he said and didn't say, or lines of thinking he could have pursued further. But for a quick 30-minute clip about the current time, definitely one of the, I think, more resonant things I've heard. So I liked it.
Totally agree. It was fascinating, the setup for the special, where they're showing the seating arrangements, people that being, I think, 6 to 10 feet away. They had to sit in these very specific areas, obviously because of COVID, and then Dave just gets on stage, and I think pretty quickly you can see the pain and anger and frustration, and I think just overall like flabbergasted like he has related to the situation. And I think his points specifically about how this isn't new, how this is something that he's been talking about, that other people in the Black community have been talking about, and that really has just kind of gotten this groundswell recently. really resonated, as well as him, I think, commenting on his place in all of this, right? How he feels like he's okay taking a back seat to the younger people who are doing the work on the ground and kind of just being that like voice in the back. I thought that this was one of the best statements I've seen from a celebrity, talking out against, about this topic. And he kind of called out Don Lemon a little bit, who had initially called out him and other black celebrities for not speaking out. What did you think about that and that portion of the special?
Yeah, so this clip, this from Dave, dropped. I believe it was the same day that we had that like compilation of celebrity clips owning up to white privilege and supremacy and stuff like that. I'll be honest, I didn't actually watch that clip. I just saw everyone shitting on it, and like that kind of like corny bullshit, even if it's well intentioned, I think is what Dave was like. Even though he hadn't seen it yet, that's kind of like what he's like. Point is, you don't want me to do that. That doesn't serve anyone or help anyone, right? Yeah. But I would say like people calling on like, and Dave's whole point about this was like the streets are going to act whether I say anything or not. These people know they don't need me to tell them, and he's right. That's true. But I think reason people want him to speak up, especially someone like Don Lemon, but really anyone, is not to preach to the choir, but really to say this to people that aren't in the streets, that don't get it, And he didn't really acknowledge that at all. So I did find that a little disappointing, because it's like, there is still good your platform can do beyond amplifying something you already believe. So I did find that a little off.
Yeah. I definitely don't think Dave is a perfect person, as none of us are. And I think he's certainly still figuring out exactly what his role is in all of this. But I think this is a great first step towards him being a leader and a voice in this, hopefully. I think pretty much everything I've seen in reaction to this has been positive. So I'm hoping that this will encourage him and other comedians and other celebrities just in general to use their platform to not necessarily do like the corny, like I'm gonna, I take responsibility thing, but actually advocating for real change. And this actually brings me to something we haven't really talked about, but I feel like a celebrity who has handled this situation so much better than I ever expected is Kanye West, right? Kanye has not spoken out during this time. He's not made any major statements, but what he has done is he's taken action to set up financial things. I'm not sure if it's a scholarship or a fundraiser or something like that or make a donation to George Floyd's daughter. He's donated to a lot of Black advocacy groups, and I think has just really kind of put his money where his mouth gladly isn't right now. Yes. So I'd like to see more celebrities doing things like that than these corny scripted videos on Twitter. So
right.
Good on Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's some stuff in here that I guess you don't really need given the gravity of what's being discussed. Like he does call Candace Owens and Laura Ingraham a lot of names. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to just call them names. You can just like pick them apart because of what they say and what they do. You don't actually have to just like go to like the first grade insults. But it was nice to hear him talk glowingly of LeBron, who has recently done a lot of activism in terms of getting out the vote and stuff like that. So I think my favorite quip too is probably when Dave he goes through a lot of the famous deaths we've had at the hands of police, right? Like Eric Garner and Philando Castile, etc. And I think one of the times where it was really cutting was when he mentioned the NRA, and the only time they were in favor of assault rifle ban was, of course, when the Black Panthers were in public with said weapons. So Dave, once again, he can be really cutting without saying too much.
Oh, and for sure.
There's a lot of good stuff in this.
Yeah, and to your point, a lot of times when Dave would be making a point about Eric Gardner or Philando Castile or about the Black Panthers, it would cut to like a picture of them, a video of the killings of these people, which I think kind of just drove home the point further. And we'll be talking about a movie that does a similar thing later on. But just really, I think the more that Dave Chappelle and other people of this stature are speaking out and bringing light to these issues, and hopefully speaking well on these issues, and using the evidence we have of these things, the stronger those points are driven home, and hopefully people continue to sustain action as we move forward. Dave Chappelle, man, glad he spoke out. But let's transition here to some TV, right? So we went from YouTube now to television, and we're going to start with what we do in the shadows. The FX vampire comedy season 2 just wrapped up. We reviewed the first episode of season 2. At the end of season 1 last year, I was left a little bit like, this didn't really hit for me. I don't know if this is always my bag. I've come all the way around. This might be the funniest show on television, in my opinion, right now. Just every episode, I found myself in stitches for one thing or another. I think Colin, it might be my favorite character on television right now. It's just like so pointed to like the worst type of people in society, and just some great cameos from people this season as well. So a lot to like. How are you feeling about season 2?
Yeah, I agree. I think especially as some of the more lauded HBO comedies this year have, or in the recent past, have concluded their runs. What We Do in the Shadows has kind of stepped up as being like the kind of top of the comedy thrill, and I really hope this gets some major Emmy love in a field that has lost stuff like Veep and Modern Family of recent. So yeah, it's just hilarious. I think what really stands out to me is I continue to get amazed by how clever some of the jokes are and the scenarios that get set up, and it's like sometimes I'd be like, all right, well, like vampires being in present day and not understanding how society works, that'll eventually get old and rote, right? Well, it hasn't yet. It's still really funny and really well done. And like season 1, it's a formula, a serialized nature that is just really easy to have cameos. And there's some really notable ones last year, of course, like Nick Kroll. And this year you get Craig Robinson, and I think Mark Hamill really stands out this season. And I think that's always a good thing for a comedy to have, because it can really keep the energy and keep the freshness while you have these low commitments that actors can make to your show, showing up for a day or two of work. So that's awesome. And yeah, man, like it's just some funny shit. Like I think episode 3 really stood out to me. The superb owl. Mm-hmm. Something so simple about not understanding what the Super Bowl means and just reading it wrong, right? Yeah. And on top of that, you have Nadja actually having a relationship with the old grandma, the old mom of the neighbor, because again, she's lived so long that she's actually been alive for this person's whole life. And it's like, oh wow, such a simple concept that is once again ripe for really great comedy. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know how effective it is to just say the show is really funny all the time, but it's just really funny.
Yeah, there were so many moments this season. Like I mentioned, Colin, the episode where he gets the promotion, I think it's episode 5, and his powers just keep growing. Oh my god, it's so funny how like he gets promoted, he's like worried about it, and then he finds out that being promoted, everybody has to cater to him and like react to his jokes. He's able to suck more of the energy from people. So good. Also, then the next episode, On the Run, those two in the middle, where you have Mark Hamill, who's this vampire who's looking for Matt Berry's Laszlo to pay him a debt. So Matt Berry just runs away and then becomes Jackie Daytona. Oh man, I just want a whole season as Jackie Daytona now. Like I thought that was hysterical how he loves girls volleyball, like high school girls volleyball. Man, I just love those 2 episodes, and so many of them. And everybody, I think, gets moments to shine. I thought the witches episode was also really funny near the end of the season. Especially when Nadja is like, you had sex with her, and he's like, she's a dark-haired girl, I thought it was you. And like then they basically like go show all of them, and then what's the other vampire, I'm forgetting his name, is he had sex with Landor. Too. Yeah, Landor's like, yeah, thought I was you too. Like just the way it goes. I think someone that really stepped up this season in terms of their role was Guillermo, which I think it has really great payoff at the end when he just murks all the vampires when they're going to kill the 4 there. But I really liked his arc throughout the season. I think him being like Van Helsing lineage, and becoming this vampire slayer while also wanting to become a vampire, and like when he goes to the other, become the familiar for the other vampire who's not actually one. All that shit was just so well done. Yeah, I guess there's really not much more to say other than the show's excellent.
Yeah, man. I'm really hoping for some good Emmy love because it deserves it, and it's kind of the cream of the crop for comedies right now.
Yeah. Also, shout out Jermaine Clement, who was in the final episode and directed a couple of these, and his presence is always welcome. So,
of course, the original movie as well.
Yes, absolutely. Why don't we move on though to not a comedy per se, where I think we're going to talk about a game show or a dramedy around, or a drama around a game show, Quiz on AMC, BBC original, airing on AMC in the States, written by James Graham and directed by Stephen Frears. 3 episodes telling the story about this man in the UK who, him and his wife and family, found a way to cheat on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he won $1 million. Pretty crazy story overall that I really wasn't aware of.
Nope.
Played the main character is played by Matthew McFadden, who's Tom on Succession on HBO, and then his wife is Sian Clifford, who's the older sister in Fleabag, Claire. You know, I have mixed feelings about this show. I think there were moments that I thought were really well done, and then some moments that I was left feeling a little bit confused in terms of what they wanted me to take away from what was happening. But overall, I think that the story and the way that they told it was really well done, and just overall like a solid show. How'd you feel about this miniseries?
Yeah, I just want to note too, it actually wasn't on BBC. It was on ITV/Channel 3, one of the British broadcast networks, which may have been the same network that broadcast Who Wants to Be a Millionaire back in the early 2000s. Not sure about that. It sounds familiar though. Yeah, so I also was not familiar with this story. I think its closeness to the 9/11 attacks probably immediately separates it from the purview of the understanding of most Americans, I'd imagine, at least in the way we learn things. But yeah, it's only a 3-part series. It already ran over in Europe, but 3-part series based on the play too. Like, kind of weird that this actually became a short run play, but I like that it did not have any really fat in the storytelling at all. It's only 3 hours. Although I actually was curious, you know, what this could have been if it was a little bit longer and we had actually more time with these characters and their motivations and stuff, because it moves at a pretty quick pace. We're really just moving through the plot. But I honestly did really enjoy it because I think McFadden and Clifford were really well cast. They're in general just welcome presences and coming off, I think, career highs, we could say, with Fleabag and Succession. So just seeing them just kind of be a couple is already a high floor, like, for a show. And it's just kind of cool seeing his story play out because I didn't know about it. So I guess in one sense, it's really just a dramatization of real events, real history in a certain sense. Like, I don't know if there's a whole lot of like anything left under the hood, I guess. Maybe more episodes could have gotten there, not sure. But for what it was, I did enjoy it, just kind of seeing it played out. And Michael Sheen also just a nice presence as Chris Tarrant, the host of the show.
I totally agree. I think the casting was really solid all around, especially McFadden and Clifford as a couple. They really make Charles Ingram out to be this like oaf, you know, in a sense. And I'm left a little bit unsure about that, because in reading further about him, several years after this happened, he was discharged from the army for committing fraud.
Right, insurance fraud of some kind.
Yeah. So it seems like he may not be as innocent as they make him out to be, or maybe he really is just that much of a puppet in all of these things. I think I was left a little bit confused on what they were really trying to say about him.
Right, and I think that's what's interesting too, is the first 2 episodes are really like the build up to the deed. Then the second episode is really just it all playing out, and we're seeing like the minute. What was the name of the machine? The minutes too fast. The fingers. The machine that you buzz in basically to get in the chair.
finger.
Yeah, like we see that getting built and practiced on, and we learn about the syndicate, which in real life was called the consortium. That was all that was basically real.
Crazy.
Not made up. Yeah. We learn all about that, right? And then in episode 3, the finale, the final episode, we learn that, wait, are we actually not supposed to believe this as it was told to us? This is not assumed as fact. And the lawyer they have gives a really convincing case in terms of like laying out the coughs and how it's all pretty circumstantial and certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt. And the way evidence was administered. And like, you're just like, wait a minute. I thought we were watching them and I'm supposed to root for them to get away with it. You actually want me to believe they didn't even do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, Ingram's wife was just doing it with her brother and not, like that kind of threw me for a loop. And maybe if we had more time with the story, you could have established that like demarcation in the couple. It felt a little abrupt to me, but I still enjoyed it. Again, I think maybe because it was so tight, it's still pretty easy to enjoy.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, no, definitely. It's an easy show to watch. It's a really compelling story, and the acting is great. And I actually just wanted to shout out Tristan Gravel, who plays Adrian Pollock, who's Diana Ingram's brother. Mm-hmm. Kind of is like the person that kicks all this off.
Yeah, he sucks.
Just
by the way.
Yeah, real scumbag. He's bottom 3 with Sandy and the other kid that we hated this year from Jamie from Normal People. fuck those guys.
Not Rushmore of poor television characters in 2020.
An aspect of this I really liked was them showing the conception of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah, that was sick.
I found that very compelling, and I thought it was really cool how they even like had the guy like betting it like his own money, quote unquote, to like pitch the concept to him, and how that actually became really intense. Just really, really cool how they got all that.
Got 20 quid. I'm throwing up 120.
And then when they first put the show on the air and how like the first person that it really became intense with, I thought that was really cool. So also, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Just a great game show. You remember watching it when it first came out?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, with Regis Philbin, I believe, for
absolutely.
Us. So it didn't just come back in like a different form with Jimmy Kimmel and like celebrities, which kind of negates the whole tension for me because celebrities don't need the money. But I guess that kind of speaks to how game shows work, is most of them have an inherent shelf life to the interest of the watching public.
Just to note that they do give all the money they win to charity.
Okay.
They play for charities. It's weird because there's no audience. So instead of like a 50-50, now they have a Ask Jimmy Kimmel, or if they keep it to a certain point, they get a lifeline back. They can use it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird that I guess Jeopardy is still is a trivia game, right? But you think like trivia, like bar trivia is a pretty big institution, I'd say, at this point in the Western world. So like, why aren't there more trivia based game shows, right? Like there's always like was it At Midnight, that Chris Hardwick one kind of came and went. Like I feel like there's just not a lot of them. It's just really Jeopardy's the only one that sticks.
That's a good point.
You'd think there'd be another one by now, but there really isn't. Like Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud, they're not really that. So
yeah, Jeopardy is just such an institution. I think they really drive at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire captures that intensity of like risking something, whereas I think it's hard to always get that back. But no, that's a good point. Something to think about. Any last thoughts on quiz before we wrap up?
Yeah, check it out. I think it's definitely, been under remarked upon here. Again, it already had aired in Europe, and now it's just kind of airing alongside a lot of other more high profile shows here. So it's already done now. So I didn't see a whole lot of conversation about it, but I think people that do check it out will probably enjoy it.
Yeah. Also, my least favorite part was when they killed the dog. So was not a fan.
It was an accident, honey. It was an accident.
Why don't we jump to HBO now? We're going to talk a little bit of I Know This Much Is True.
Unfortunately.
The HBO miniseries directed by Derek Cianfrance. We reviewed the first episode a couple weeks back. 6 episodes wrapped up last night. Heavy watch, Dave. I was describing the events to my fiance, and she just couldn't believe. Like I was describing like what happened across 4 episodes. She's like, all this happened just in 4 episodes. Like, yeah, there's a lot going on here, and most of it is really
book club, baby.
Yeah, most of it's really painful and emotionally, and it looks painful for Dominic, played by Mark Ruffalo, who's really the main character of this, and his brother is
Thomas.
Thomas, yes. Cuts off his hand in the first episode, is, I think, diagnosed schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic. I think this is a really well done series. I think there's some really good performances in here. And I think the storytelling, weaving in intergenerational trauma and pain and grief, is really well told. But when you really boil it down, it's a heavy watch, and I think it just sometimes felt a little bit more like a chore for me. Were you feeling the same?
It's grief porn. and just because it's serious subject matter doesn't make it good. That's the problem. Like, the acting's great. Mark Ruffalo definitely getting nominated at the very least. Like, it's an acting showcase for sure. It's also pretty well written. Although I'd say the use of narration throughout is a bit of a crutch. In general, I think most people would say narration is not what you want to this degree. But yeah, it looks good. You know, I do enjoy seeing Poughkeepsie and other sites I know from my home on TV. I just wish it was in a show I enjoyed watching. That's the problem for me, you know?
Yeah.
Because like Dominic, through just about the whole show, is just this miserable, nihilistic person. And you just can't stand the guy, despite all the trauma he's gone through. And you learn the levels of trauma with the stuff with his baby and stuff. You learn about more of it as you watch the show. It just keeps compounding. But I don't feel any more sympathetic to him because he's just so miserable. And you get why he's miserable, but it's like, it's just not fun to be with this dude.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, if I had to like rank the toughest moments to watch, or like the things I found the hardest to watch, I think definitely the baby dying suddenly. It seems like from Sid's, I don't think that was ever confirmed.
Yeah, I believe that's the reason.
Pretty obvious. I think the him kind of bullying that little girl who ends up being murdered. It seems like murdered, or something nefarious happened where she ends up dead, and then he says that speech, and it's so like hypocritical, and I thought that was just really tough. I mean, and they're kids, so you can kind of shrug that off a bit. And then his great grandfather or his grandfather killing that monkey. I was out on the monkey. I mean, after he just like had his brother basically executed, just like really tough stretch there. All the stuff in terms of like the old country stuff was really, really tough to watch. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm left being like, wow, this was really well made, really well acted, really well shot. Don't ever really want to watch this again. And I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like there's really serious, punishing stuff that's really great, and I don't know, has a reason to be seen, you know. But this shit ain't Schindler's List. Not even close. Like I just didn't find it profound. I did not find the way it wrapped up effective. And again, as we've been saying, there's parts to like. I also really liked Archie Punjabi, who we just saw in Run. I thought she was really good as Dr. Patel. Rosie O'Donnell as the social worker, I thought was excellent.
Yeah.
But I think just the specific narrative that we're getting, I just don't think that's really satisfying thing. I'm really kind of curious why this book became such a sensation back in like the late 90s or whenever it was.
I
haven't read it. I don't know, but I don't see the appeal.
Yeah, it's funny, the parts you're identifying that I agree with. Rosie O'Donnell, Archie Punjabi, I think they resonate and feel so pleasurable to watch in a show like this because they are illuminating the aspect that you want to see in terms of character growth, which you really don't get until the last episode, you know, which is where he finally like accepts his past, accepts that he can't change these things, that he can't like take care of his brother all the time, and that he's caused a lot of pain. I mean, like if you look at it, he's really been a major part of like several people dying which is like pretty crazy to like just kind of look at.
He's
but
40 though. Why do I care
right.
about his redemption at this point?
Right. And like, I feel like if we had gotten a little bit more of that growth throughout, and not just like him fighting against and just like giving in after he loses his brother, almost like that weight is lifted. And he can like say, okay, maybe we're not cursed. Maybe I'm just a fucked up person. Then it can come like that scene where he is talking to Catherine Hahn in the hospital, and he like takes responsibility for their relationship falling apart after their daughter died. I thought that was really, really compelling. That's the reel that they're probably going to show when they show Ruffalo's Emmy nomination, later on. But there wasn't enough of that to really make it feel like this was something I wanted to stay engaged with.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, maybe if this was told, I'm sure in the book it's told through Dominic's perspective, but the way we see it on TV, we already immediately see his faults and we see his inability to own up to things and present things the way they really are, right? So you're already like distanced from Dominic's perspective. You're just waiting for him to wake up and get it. Maybe if it was told in such a way where he was an unreliable narrator and we actually learn over time that the way he thinks about things, remembers things, is not how they actually happen. Maybe if it was done that way, it'd be more compelling or rewarding arc. I don't know if that's even possible the way the book's written, but yeah, I just I have a really hard time recommending someone go through the first 5 hours to get to the 6th episode. So disappointing for me in particular, again, due to the the big to do that it was back home because it was filmed there.
Yeah. Well, I if you haven't watched it, if you want to sit with some heavy themes, some heavy times, go for it. If not, maybe this is one that you can just read the book and see if you get more out of it. Why don't we talk about HBO though? Issa Rae with Insecure season 4 wrapping up last night. Insecure, best soundtrack on TV.
Yeah, man, sure. Definitely my favorite one.
Yeah,
banger after banger, baby.
And just the choices are so just like perfect. It's never like a song that sounds good but doesn't really like fit the theme. It's always kind of it's always like just the right fit. I thought this was a really good season. I found the Issa Lauren stuff a little bit more compelling than it has been in past seasons, which I enjoyed. But I do find myself feeling like these seasons keep running back the same core conflicts, right? And maybe all this is a show about Issa and Molly and their friendship as like, actually being soulmates while they search for their, partners. But I think I am feeling a little bit like, I feel like we're seeing some of the same stuff play out over and over. But I think there's some new things to freshen it up, and I still really enjoy just being with these characters. Like the episode where they did the block party or that concert, I thought was excellent, just like really awesome. And just there's moments throughout where I find myself just being like, this show is excellent. How did you feel about season 4?
Yeah, I did like that. I did like it. I think the conflict between Molly and Issa is really the central storyline for the whole season. And this is the first season that's 10 episodes instead of 8. So we had a lot of time. And because I think it's set up over time and really grounded in a lot of like it starts out with subtle digs and comments and side eyes and really progresses until it's in a really bad place. And they're just not really friends at that moment, And it makes sense. And you're getting that as both characters have actually grown, right? I think that was a criticism in the beginning of the show, was really, are these people going to change? And Issa has gotten her shit together, right? She's being a successful public event planner and stuff like that, right? Already working on the next gig. And Molly is obviously killing it at work, but also progressing romantically, at least for the time being. So between they're growing together and yet they're growing apart in the process, and seeing how that works, it's like you get it. I think that's weird because like you kind of get some good stuff woven in. It's kind of subtle, right? Like you get Nathan coming back in. Nathan, I don't think most Insecure fans liked Nathan, the way Nathan goes out in past seasons, where he basically ghosts Issa. You find out Nathan realizes he is bipolar, and Issa feels bad about the way she handled that, right?
Mm.
And on the other side, you have signs all season that Tiffany is having postpartum depression, and it really becomes a moment of crisis in the finale. Those are really good moments. It's funny. I was looking on Twitter, and like, I think some people were like, "Oh, I thought Tiffany would have a man in that hotel room," and it's like, well, if you paid attention, you could tell she was off the whole time. I don't think it's because she didn't like Derek. Derek is like the best dude on the show, I think,
by far. Yeah,
Yeah. I think there's an issue with repeating narratives or choices. It's because of Lawrence.
Right.
I think the reintroduction of Lawrence at the end of season 3, I think was kind of an inflection point for the show, because we realized they were gonna close this circle as opposed to let Issa actually move on and have this guy leave. But because I think Jay Ellis, really good looking dude, good actor, he stars on the rise, makes sense that he came back to the show on that regard. But man, Lawrence is messy. And we get some bombs in the finale, man.
Yeah, the Condola baby bomb, certainly a huge issue to be brought up that kind of pushes Issa and Lawrence apart again. Leaves Lawrence unsure what he's gonna do in terms of like being with Condola, supporting a baby. I felt like the final episode was a really strong one, because I felt like the conversations felt so real. And that's another thing is I think the show does really well is the conversations always feel just like things you actually see and hear in your everyday life, whether it's Molly texting Issa by accident, and being like, see, I'm trying to work with her. Like, that felt so real in so many ways.
Yeah.
The conversation between Ethan and Issa when Ethan told her that he was bipolar, I thought was really, really good. Or even if it was like the way that they handled Andrew's brother being like suddenly racist to Molly on the vacation, I felt like that all felt like things you'd see from,
especially given the timing we're watching it. It's like, God, this guy just doesn't get it at all, does he?
Totally. So I give a lot of credit for that. How are you feeling about the bombs dropped in the final episode, though?
Yeah, well, it is kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing, right? Because like Lawrence, I think definitely was a better presence, or a more likable presence on the show in season 4, because he has his shit together. He's been employed a while and he's actually being successful, right? And the issue with Lawrence early on was like, oh, he's a good looking dude. He dresses well when he has to, but God, he's just not motivated. And that was how we're introduced to that relationship. And seeing that kind of just completely spiral, because now he has a kid on the way, and will he move to San Francisco? How can Issa come to grips with having a relationship with someone who's about to have a kid with somebody else, even if they both want to stay together? Like, you can understand all this conflict, but it's like, because we went back to Lawrence effing up, it's like, frustrating. I really like Andrew.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind if he came back somehow, but you understand why him and Molly are now split, because you saw the signs throughout the season. I think, again, the show does a really good job of showing relationships change over time. Everything feels earned. So looking forward to season 5. I remember going in the season, I thought this was the final season for some reason. I'm not sure why I thought that, but that's not true. Season 5 is coming, probably not coming until 2022, given the production delays, as is commonplace at this point. But yeah, I guess in a sense we're kind of in a open place once again. It's like, are Molly and Issa going to become friends by episode 1 of next season? And then we just do some other stuff? I don't know.
Yeah. I think the show so expertly handles drama and comedy, and it really balances it really well, so that you're never fully one way or the other. Like, it will be something super serious, like Molly and Issa getting in a fight or yelling at each other, and then someone's like, oh, she's reaching for a gun, then everybody goes running, and it's just like pandemonium. And even though that isn't funny, that's kind of where things are at, I think the way that they show it and it plays out, and like the aftermath of it, is pretty it's light humor. It's at least lighthearted, if nothing else. Shout out Vince Staples.
Yeah.
I mean, your guy. just dropping in, performing fun.
Just say, from experience, there are not that many girls at a Vince Staples show. Even a local show in LA, that is inaccurate portrayal. Let's leave it at that. Shout out to Mine.
Yep.
Chilling in that very same episode. You got how did he say it? We got the
what happened to your accent?
The judging branch and the money branch, the Bank of America, whatever he said.
Yeah.
That was great. We didn't get a lot of Natasha Rothwell this season, though.
No.
But she did write episode 8. And she co-wrote last season's finale as well. And I noticed she had some producer credits as well. But yeah, I mean, not a whole lot of her probably to do scheduling. Jay Ellis did direct episode 7, his first time doing that. And Kerry Washington also directed episode 9. So, I think Insecure, the big highlight people gave it right from the start was that this is a show about black people by black people. And that obviously is still true. Now it's also a great LA show. And I think you kind of get the union of that in that finale where you see the Kobe Bryant mural, you see the Nipsey Hussle court, it's like, and the music choices, of course, are very in the culture. So, yeah, man, Insecure. And it's, I think, honestly, quite popular. It really lights up Twitter every night. It is a week-to-week event for a lot of people, even if it's not like Game of Thrones,
Totally. I do want to shout out the police interaction in the final episode.
Got one in there. That was good. Yeah.
I hope more police handle situations like that, please. But any last thoughts as we wrap up? Good show.
It's funny. Lil Rel Howery already had a character on the show, but the whole time I just wanted TSA Bay, who's good character. I wanted him to be Lil Rel.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because of Get Out. I don't know. But
he's hilarious though.
Yeah.
When he comes up to Issa and Lawrence with his girl, and oh my god, so funny. All right, why don't we move on to away from TV onto some movies. Judd Apatow this past weekend releasing video on demand, The King of Staten Island, basically the Pete Davidson story, starring Pete Davidson, obviously. Marissa Tomei, Bill Burr, Judd Apatow. Who else we got? Steve Buscemi,
Ricky Velez, the comic, is one of his boys. Moises Arias, the former Disney star, is one of his boys. Lou Wilson from American Vandal is one of his boys. And then what's his girl? Who plays girl? Belle Powley.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She was great. I believe I did not know about her. She was on the morning show recently. But lovely Staten Island accent. He looks like Antonio Banderas. She was great. Yeah, good cast. Sneaky. Oh, and you said Buscemi? Yeah. And Jimmy Tatro from American Vandal and Bad Education, who once again is being typecast as the airhead guy. I feel bad for him.
Nah, but he keeps getting those roles though. So
get the money, boy.
Yeah, keep getting that work.
Oh, Action Bronson too.
Yes. Oh my God, so good. Just like popping up at later on.
I fell in a thorn bush. So good. Definitely improv.
You're definitely going to die. Oh, you think so? No, I'll be good.
No cops.
I really enjoyed The King of Staten Island. I felt like it was a little bit long and maybe dragged at a couple of parts, but I thought it was really funny. And I thought Bill Burr and Pete Davidson were fantastic. I'd never seen either one of them give performances like they gave in this, which I think speaks to not only how much Pete put of himself into this script and this role, but also Burr just been this, a comic top tier guy for a while, really getting to display some acting chops with, I think, probably his biggest role. So we've seen him in Breaking Bad with some bit parts and some small roles here and there, but he really gets a lot to work with here, especially alongside Marissa Tomei. I think they have great chemistry as a couple in this, so just some really good performances. What were you most struck by with this?
Yeah, I mean, I'd already been kind of coming around and rooting for Pete's film career after Big Time Adolescence, which came out back in March, right when quarantine started on Hulu. And it's been clear that Pete has good acting chops, but to this point, he really is still kind of playing similar versions of the same character, largely what we associate with him being himself. And now having this film come out, which is obviously semi-autobiographical, lots of pretty easy to grasp touchstones to what we know about Pete Davidson in terms of the death of his dad and his mental health and things like that. Drug use, I guess, as well. Type of humor he likes to use, all that kind of stuff. But it still makes sense. And maybe we'll learn in time that this is like the breadth of Pete Davidson's acting range. Still, jury's still out on that. How much farther he can go as an actor. But to your point, he does kind of, I think, do a lot here. The way it handles mental health in this movie is quite subtle. It's never explicitly laid out in the script. It's really more about the way Pete delivers his lines and the way characters talk about his character. And I really like that. And to your point about Bill Burr, he's also someone that I haven't really thought much of anything about as an actor, but he just seems to be getting more and more roles. He's on Mandalorian last year, but he was honestly perfectly cast as a bit of a deadbeat firefighter guy who has his own issues. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think you're right. The chemistry between Pete and Burr is the key, and they both are able to run with Apatow dialogue and improv as necessary. So that all really works and really meshes together. But the movie, because it's semi-autobiographical, I guess, maybe because it's a long Apatow movie like Funny People, there's a lot of heart to it and a lot of dramatic stuff. It's really more of a dramedy. It's not like Knocked Up. There's not like joke after joke after joke. It's not one of those Apatow films. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just going to resonate with people when they watch it because it just kind of comes together in a great way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a point I really liked that you made was how mental health is portrayed in this, but not really spoken about. Like you see when Marissa Tomei tells Pete he needs to move out, or Scott, that the character Scott, that he needs to move out, how he's like really angry at first and switches to like, what did I do? Like, I'm sorry. It's like that quick switch to like that fear. He kind of reverts back to that like 7-year-old when he lost his dad in that way. And I also like that they really set this up with the heart of it being, should these heroes, these first responders, who put their lives on the line every single day, might not be coming home every single day, should they have families? And because of the impact it can have on them, and kind of Scott grappling with that question and kind of coming around on it through his experiences with Bill Burr, not his dad, but this person who takes on a bit of like a fatherly figure in his life, and connects him with other like fatherly and brotherly figures through the fire department. And I thought the scene where they really set that up when they go to the Staten Island Yankees was a really, really good scene. I think the acting in that is done really well because Pete kind of like lets them have it, and they like push back, but not in a way where it's like, yo, shut the fuck up. They're like, whatever, like,
yeah,
you can have your opinion. Yeah, it's just so well done. And Buscemi, I think, is like the perfect like heart of the movie, so to speak, in that, like the grandfatherly figure, kind of helping Bill Burr navigate all this. Yeah, and then helping Pete Davidson's character navigate all this. Just really expertly written and well done. How did you feel about that as like the central like driving plot point, I guess, throughout the story?
I think through knowing the story of Pete Davidson, the guy, which I assume most people that are watching this movie are doing it because of Pete's celebrity or they're big Apatow fans. But like, we kind of know this about Pete because it's been such a central part about his comedy and his career to this point. The fact that he can be so self-deprecating and open about personal tragedy and stuff like that. That's kind of like the whole it of Pete Davidson, right? So we kind of know that, and you kind of sense that it's going to be semi-biographical, especially when you watch the trailers and you realize that the firefighters are going to come in. Mm-hmm. So I guess I wasn't like wowed by any of like plots, but I think just because the themes are handled in I think a really warm, effective way, it's still an enjoyable watch, even if nothing's going to really like take you by surprise. Mm-hmm. So it's well put together.
Did you feel like Did you feel like the use of like that theme and like just Scott overall struggling with that was um effectively like softened by his interactions with the kids, you know, because I actually found those moments really endearing when he's like walking Bill Burr's kids to school and he's like really pumping up the daughter for her singing ability and Harold, I think the brother for
Yep.
his. I thought that was a really like humanizing like way to help that character grow and soften a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was really good, and it was kind of abrupt to how when I believe it's when he gets kicked out by his mom that he's like, all right, fine, fuck it, let's go rob the pharmacy
Mm-hmm.
after being so against it. That kind of felt like a weird tonal shift. And I
Yeah.
guess because we subtly are supposed to believe he has perhaps bipolar or something along those lines, that would explain the sudden mood shift when he faces some uncertainty. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the stuff with the kids was well done. Harold was actually kind of funny, and
Yeah.
and having that build up with he shows his dad
The drawing.
the drawing of Iceman. Was that what he
Mm-hmm.
called him? Did he just call him Iceman?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was expecting Pete to be like, you can't do that. We already have that guy. He's on the X-Men. I thought he was just going to be like, you can't invent this guy. He's already invented. But that's not the joke
Yeah.
he made.
No. And I also thought that was great to like show that Pete actually is competent at something, or Scott is competent at something in this story, because you
Mhm.
kind of see his tattoos and there's a couple that are good, but most of them there's like something really off about them, whether it's the eyes, which he can just never get right. He does them too dark, or like not be able to like draw the tattoos well enough to get a job at the parlor. And I think that was a moment where you kind of see the movie shift, because Bill Burr also then is more like, oh, this kid actually has potential and could be something, and maybe I should give him a second shot. Um, I do agree about the tonal shift. I felt like a lot of the stuff, if there was one part that I maybe would have just cut out, would have been that whole robbery. But I think they needed to have those friends in jail so that Pete didn't have anywhere else to stay. Right? That's kind of
Yeah, that makes sense.
like why that
Yeah.
had to happen. But then I thought all the stuff at the firehouse was excellent, really engaging. I thought where it ended up was good too. It didn't have like that moment where there was like that super light bulb moment, but you kind of see him allowing himself to have something good in his life by the end, in terms of the relationship with his girlfriend, and um, ending with Pursuit of Happiness playing as he looks up at the New York City Manhattan skyline. Very cool ending, I thought.
And they use another Cuddy drop, Just What I Am, to start the film too, which also is a bit meta because we know Pete Davidson's a huge Kid Cudi fan. Those are both good musical cues, both effective. I thought one of the more jarring ones was when they're about to do the fights at the restaurant after hours. They drop 504's Big Drip.
Yeah.
I was like, that shit is not being played at some Staten Island ass restaurant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that, and they play explosions in the sky when they do like the firefighter scene. It just felt like, I don't know if it was not edited in well enough for me. I just felt like a bit of like a jarring moment with that drop. But overall, I mean, very little that I would take away from this movie. I think this is an achievement, and just feels like Pete's stock keeps rising. So I'm gonna buy now and sell later if I need to. But he's 25, 26, like.
Something like that, yeah. Baby's what, 93, 92?
He got the shout out in the Chappelle special we talked about, 846.
Yep, yeah. Pete Davidson is 26, and yeah, it's time for him to get off SNL. He's an actor, and he's not a big part of SNL as it is. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, I agree. His stand up, probably the least favorite thing I've seen him in the last year. So do more movies, Pete, please. Any last thoughts before we move on?
First Apatow film in 5 years. Kind of sneakily been a while for when he actually directed. He did a lot of TV and stuff of late, but
was it
first
Trainwreck?
one's Trainwreck. Yep, 2015.
Yeah, this is a good avenue for Apatow, letting these up and coming comedians kind of rate their story and helping them tell it. I think he's really good at that. So we'll see what he does next. But let's jump to someone who's made a movie a lot more recently. Spike Lee made Black Klansman just brief, 2 years ago?
2018.
Yeah, 2 years. And he dropped The Five Bloods on Netflix just this past week, or this past Friday, not even a week ago. We watched it. I think we both liked it, but did we love it, Dave? Did you love this movie?
Yeah, I thought it was great. Honestly, I thought it was really awesome.
Yeah, no,
it's a long film that doesn't feel long. Like I think it really nails everything Spike's going for, and is also quite similar to Black Klansman in terms of the way it ties into current events and stuff. But yeah, I thought Five Bloods was awesome.
I completely agree. I'm actually probably going to be processing this live because I just think there's so many like themes and metaphors that are told throughout this story, you know, in terms of blackness and black society, as well as United States government, United States at war, as in, you know, imperialist almost. I guess it wasn't imperialist war in Vietnam. I don't know if that's how you would refer to it, but certainly us
right.
Invading their, you know, the space.
Stopping communism. That's right. What we were doing back then.
if that's what you want to call it, I'm with it. But I guess just to kind of break this down, you know, you have these five black soldiers in the Vietnam War. Paul, Otis, Eddie, Melvin, and Storm and Norman, who is not what in, you know, in the modern story that's being told, but in the flashbacks, who are sent to recover the whatever was being brought by this plane in Vietnam, the CIA plane that was shot down. They go to get it. They find out that it was gold that was going to be given to the people in the village who were helping the American soldiers at that time. Yeah. They lose Storm and Norman in the counterattack by the Vietnam Army.
VC.
And then they lose the gold, so they go back 50 years later to recover it. They find it, and it's kind of about their journey through Vietnam and to recover this gold. I gotta say, I think all the performances are really good, but you gotta start with Delroy. Delroy Lindo as Paul just, I think, steals the show with this. He gets the most to do, obviously, too, but I think his character just kind of blew me away. How did you feel about Delroy Lindo in this?
Oh yeah, Paul is the most important character in the movie, and that's because he's representing so many things at once, right? He's a black Trump supporter, which is a rare but real thing. You know, I think about 10-12% of black men voted for Trump in 2016. And why they did, you know, those reasons are very deep and intricate, right? On top of that, Paul is a veteran suffering from some severe forms of PTSD, like most Vietnam vets did. And on top of that, once again, he also was kind of unable to lose the antagonism and xenophobia that he had when he was in Vietnam. You see that he's still using racial slurs towards the Vietnam people he's encountering when he returns and stuff like that, right? And I think Paul is he's just so rich and represents so many things in the film. And it all really kind of comes home at the end when he's giving a direct-to-camera monologue when he's alone in the jungle at the end. And yeah, and Delroy, of course, is just totally committed to it and honestly really great. And watching him devolve and take control of the group and then go off on his own, I was kind of blown away. That was awesome.
And I think the way that the character is revealed throughout the story is really well done. Because like you said, some of those things are kind of at the forefront, that he's a black male Trump supporter, that he is suffering from a severe form of PTSD, that I think he has other mental health issues that are definitely, you know, coming up while he's journeying through the jungle. But then when you kind of see why or where some of this comes from, this hardenedness, you know, how he lost his wife when his son was born, and she was like one of the only things in his life that he really felt like he loved. The other person he felt like he loved was Storm and Norman, and he accidentally shot him when the Vietnam counteroffensive came for the downed plane, and the guilt that he has from that, and seeing that all kind of those layers be pulled back, and watching Delroy's Paul devolve as you're learning these things, and then kind of come to some sense of peace before he gets absolutely Swiss cheese at the end. Just I thought it was expertly told by Spike Lee, expertly performed by Delroy Lindo. I mean, if I know that they pushed the Academy Awards back, but I feel like he's got to be up there for a nomination, because just blew me away with that performance. What other performances really struck you from this film?
I really like Norm Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was pretty good. He also represent, like, there's a lot going on in Five Bloods, right? Like, he's bringing like opioid dependence by veterans into the film, right? There's so much stuff, right? He's also bringing biracial relationships into this. I think something that a lot of people don't know about in terms of like the racism Black Asians faced, after, what was it, like 30,000 Black GIs had kids over in Vietnam over 10 years. Like, that's kind of like a piece of history like that we don't really get taught a whole lot about, like the one thing with Soul Alley, right? And that's another thing. It's just kind of in the movie, and it's done in a really warm way, and I really liked how that all comes together. And Norm Lewis, who's not Norm Lewis, I'm thinking of Clark Peters. Clark Peters is just kind of a like veteran presence, just having him be there and sell all these different themes, especially as he's kind of the one butting heads with Delroy when things start to go south. Really liked him too. But it's interesting because I was looking into this, and initially they were targeting Samuel L. Jackson, Giancarlo Esposito, and Don Cheadle for some of the lead roles. And they all didn't come together. I think Esposito was actually announced for the film and had to drop out. So those are obviously much more famous Black actors than the ones we have here. These are a lot of character actors that are carrying this film, but don't really mind. I thought everyone was really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. Clark Peters, I think especially for me, really stood out. And I thought it was interesting to see the two ways that these kind of characters go about something, right? So Norman as Norm, Storm and Norman to these guys is kind of like this idealistic soldier to them.
The Martin and the Malcolm, as they say.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, is that you either have that idea of like, we need to fight back and push back and don't trust anybody and take things with force, or we work together, we rely on our allies, and we kind of come together to beat some bigger force, as like these general undertones about how the group splits up after Eddie's death. And I thought that was just really, really fascinating, and especially with Paul's son, David, played by Jonathan Majors, choosing to go against his father in that sense, and kind of portraying those different generations, seeing different ways of going about things, and about how isolation doesn't really work if you want to achieve these goals or overcome these obstacles. So I thought that was really fascinating how it played out. I actually was a bit sad that Chadwick Boseman had such a small role in this. I was hoping to see him get a bit more time to shine, but I thought every time he got to perform, he was great.
Yeah, he really sells it, because I think one of the cool things with this movie that Spike does is there's 4 different aspect ratios, and we go all the way down to a 16 millimeter shot when we're going back to our flashbacks when we're actually in the jungle fighting in Vietnam. And Chadwick, just kind of the energy he's bringing to the role of Storm and Norman, because we're learning about him through everyone else's memory. Again, like it's a really idealistic person, and I think Chadwick, he's given a lot of speeches in his career, and he's just kind of really good at orating the themes of a movie to you, right? And I think probably my favorite part with him is when you get a Hanoi Hannah giving the propaganda, letting them know that Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then seeing all their rage, right? And again, another thing that Five Bloods is doing is explicitly telling you about the racism that Black GIs faced, both in the Army and, of course, when they went back to America, and just kind of seeing that rage after King was killed, and Norman kind of backing everyone off the ledge, right? It's just like Yeah, Chadwick was fantastic, and I actually really liked him right at the end too when he comes back, kind of like in a vision to Delroy, and he's like, "We gotta talk about this, blood," and he like he lifts up his shirt, and then he realized that he was got but that friendly fire. So yeah, man, he was really awesome. Shout out Jonathan Majors, man. He was fucking jacked in this, man. I don't know if he was always jacked, because in Black Man in San Francisco, he's wearing that big baggy suit the whole time. But God, he was ripped. It really stood out.
And I really loved the scene where he stepped on that trip mine, and he's just kind of like waiting there after Eddie gets blown up, and Paul, his dad, comes over, and they're talking about who is the sprinter at Morehouse.
Right.
Crap, I'm forgetting his name. But the way that they're talking about like how he took 13 strides instead of 15 between all the hurdles, and he could fly. I was like, oh man, this really. And then they cut back and they show it. And that's something else they do a lot. And Spike did in Black Klansman as well. Would be that when they would talk about something that happened in the past or referring to something that a person, they would actually show the person and cut back and show footage or a picture or something like that. So I thought that was a great scene, but also a great touch from Spike throughout this. Shout out Paul Walter Hauser,
of course,
coming off his performance as Richard Jewell, getting that bit role, but still just find him always funny whenever he's on screen. I also really liked Melanie Thierry, who played Hetty. I thought she was great. I don't know. What else? Soundtrack was awesome. This is something I actually wanted to bring up.
Yeah, Marvin Gaye is a big presence.
Yes.
In this film, in the beginning and the end. I saw people joking about 2 nominations for supporting actor, Delroy Lindo and Marvin Gaye.
Man, when they isolated his voice and what's going on, as Paul starts to walk through the jungle and the other Bloods go their own way, I thought that was so well done. Got goosebumps watching that scene, and I thought just the use of Marvin Gaye as like this voice embodying that time, but also like the message to now and how relevant this all still is, unfortunately, was really, really just great by Spike. I mean, this is him at his strongest, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. This is the most expensive movie Spike Lee's ever made, $45 million. And he pitched this to every studio in the town, and no one wanted to make it, so he made it with Netflix. And notable, no de-aging effects for those flashback scenes. The guys are just playing themselves once again, and they look exactly the same age, and it just doesn't matter, because that's how we used to film flashbacks, so
until the very end when they show that picture of them at the very very end. But which
if you don't have autoplay disabled, you're not going to see that post credits. But yeah, I mean, this was planned to have a con out of competition premiere too, and obviously that was kaput due to COVID. But I saw it was number 1 on Netflix's top 10 on Sunday, so I'm curious just how many people are going to be watching this, because Spike Lee's made a lot of movies. Some of them have been hits, like Black Klansman and Inside Man. A lot of them have not been hits. He's kind of almost, I think, at his most mainstream right now. And obviously being on the front page of Netflix certainly helps in that regard. Another thing I was thinking about too is, the gold, the big framing of the movie and the plot, that's quickly positioned as like it's a form of reparations for these Black vets that obviously, as I think Delroy puts it, had a hard time when they came back from the war, right? And I thought that was interesting. And then seeing that come back into the fold at the end when the Vietnam guys that are sent to get the gold instead from Jean Renault, they're like, no, this is ours. This is through the Vietnamese, and like they kind of saw it as reparations for their people as well. And the whole time I was kind of thinking of like, this kind of reminded me of like Nazi gold and like the ethics of the spoils of war and stuff like that. Again, there's just so many themes to this, and even though the movie's 2.5 hours long, it doesn't feel long because there's so much to go through. And the film uses so many, I think, important flashbacks, history clips and stuff at the beginning and the end, a lot like Black Klansman. But I think really it was really effective in the beginning for the Five Bloods because you get Muhammad Ali talking about why he wouldn't go fight, and then you get LBJ and you get Nixon speeches, you get Black Panther speeches, you get Malcolm X, you get the famous assassination clip of the guy getting shot in the head in Vietnam, right? Like there's so many, like the rape of Nanking, there's so much really visceral shit right in the beginning. And Spike, I always like that about what Spike's doing of late. I think some people don't appreciate the lack of subtlety with it, but I kind of like how he's able to weave a movie with so many themes around this kind of historical highlight reel. So yeah, man, I think the movie's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. Probably my favorite movie of the year. It's right up there with Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which technically is a 2019 movie, but I'm counting for 2020. I want to just shout out that they filmed this in Chi Minh City, a lot of it, Bangkok, and then Chiang Mai, and I appreciate that it felt very much like they were, there. Like I obviously wasn't directly, on location, but I think close enough where you really got that feel that they were in an Asian location, which I appreciated. I mean, there's nothing more I have to say. This movie fucking rocked.
Yeah, I guess the only thing quibble with is like I think everyone saw the landmines coming up. You saw that coming when Norm Lewis steps on one to die. It's kind of like operatic thing. It's like, and here we go, boom. Like, because we had the red herring when you meet the people that are there to get rid of landmines. It's like, all right. Didn't mind it though, because it's really effective in the way they tell the story. And I guess the other thing is the way they find the gold is super coincidental, right? Jonathan Majors is going to take a piss or take a shit, and he's going to dig, and he digs right onto the bar, right? And then, oh wait, here they are. There's that canyon from the battle. We're right here. We almost got it. So it's like that was a little circumstantial, but it's a movie. It's fine.
No, for sure. Certainly, I think a fair critique of it. But honestly, man, I thought this was great. Quick question. So Spike Lee, obviously very famous director, finally won an Academy Award, 2019 Oscars. Where's this in your Spike Lee favorite films? I mean, I think Do the Right Thing, probably my favorite, and then Black Klansman, then this for me, but it's all really close.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of like the really lauded early stuff like Crooklyn or Clockers. I haven't seen those. But yeah, there's kind of like a apex for him, right? It's Do the Right Thing, Inside Man, Malcolm X.
No, that's right.
Those are probably the biggest ones. Those are the biggest hits, the most seen, most widely seen ones. He Got Game, also very popular. Yeah, I still need to see a lot of his movies, but it's up there. I thought this was honestly works on just about every level, and I again was just blown away by just how many different important and still resonant themes he's able to weave into the story. So yeah, it's up there. And the thing about Spike Lee, like I was saying, he's just about as mainstream as he's ever been.
Yeah,
and it's weird, but that also tells you the way movie making works. He's coming off of one of his biggest hits that he won an Academy Award for, and he still can't get this movie made by a traditional studio. And it's only costing $35 to $45 million. It's not actually that expensive.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, I think we'll wrap up there. Watch The Five Bloods. Watch King of Staten Island. Watch Insecure. Don't watch I Know This Much. I know this much is true. Watch Quiz and watch What We Do in the Shadows. And also Dave Chappelle. We like most of what we talked about today. That's cool. What do we got for next week, though?
Phoebe Bridgers' album, the savior of rock music. Close to it, I guess. The debut of the last new HBO show for a while, Perry Mason miniseries with Matthew Rhys. Interested in Wasp Network, Penelope Cruz Netflix film that was on the festival circuit last year. And we got The Politician season 2, Ryan Murphy and Netflix. Ben Platt, that's debuting on Friday. We'll talk about that in a week or two. That's about it, though. Yeah, I'll get a Smoke Perp album if you're interested. I don't have a lot of notes right now.
Well, if you want to get all that right in your earbuds and in your earballs, subscribe on iTunes, Nowstalgia Pod. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and youtube.com/nostalgiapod and listen to this any way you want to. Share it with friends at NostalgiaPod on Twitter. And if you live in New York, and this is Tuesday, the 23rd next week, you got to go vote. So educate yourself. Vote Jamal Bowman. See you next week.